Good evening, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Phil Russer with Creatorcon Q&A. We have episode 12 with Sean Chen tonight. Before we get into our interview, as usual, I have my shout outs for everybody. For your comic book needs, I want you to go to MadTitan_comics on Instagram, or Eric Gunderson, who is the owner and operator, on Facebook. Key issues, dollar issues, graded issues, slabbed issues. He has everything you need, so please go check that out. We have Let's Do This, www.letsdodis.com, LESDUDIS. That's Andy Lee with everything pop culture and everything geek culture. Andy Lee is absolutely a great person. He's done all my promo images for me, so thank you, Andy. Please go check him out. The guy is great at what he does. We also have Inking with Kike, Enrique Lopez, his Instagram page, Studio MAENEFL. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. he has a special guest while he inks live and they talk. So please go check that out. He also has his new anthology book, Stupendous, out. So please reach out to Enrique on Facebook to get your copy of that. We have It Came From the Radio, which is an online radio station, radio show with Mark Torres as your host. And they do a lot of great indie information and news as well as pop culture. So go please check them out. They're on pretty much every platform. And Michael J. Santana has a new book out. You're going to want to check that out. It is basically about Japanese mythological creatures and folklore, and he has a series of books that he had prior out. It is called Kitsune Dreams. I hope I pronounced that right because I'm not very versed on Japanese lore. But please go check that out. It is on Amazon.com, and it is on Kindle for you to purchase and read. So having said that, I want to start with our guest tonight, Sean Chen. Sean started out with Valiant, doing a lot of their flagship titles like Exo Man of War and Rai. And he's done Wolverine, he's done Iron Man, he's done Elektra, he's on Batman Beyond. But he also has an original story that he had posted up originally on Instagram and put in this collection, which now has a new name, just to show you some interior art. Sean Chen, I have to tell you, is a great writer as well as an artist. If you didn't know, this story, I love it. It was a lot of fun. It had a lot of great humor. It had some drama, and it has a great message in it, a great moral theme. It is now called Wingman, and he has a one-day sale going on, which is going on currently right now, and you can see scrolling on the bottom at nextchapterpost.com is where you can order the book. 1 in every 10 people gets an original page from the book, and those are pretty good odds. So the story alone is worth the purchase, but you could also get original art from Sean Chen. Again, it's called Wingman. We're going to discuss it today. I really highly recommend this book, so please check it out and pick it up. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sean Chen. Hey, Sean.
Hey,
how are you?
Very good. Actually, before we start, do I hear like train horns going on in the background?
Unfortunately, the LIR is very loud here, and you might hear crickets. And it's Phil, not Patrick.
Okay.
You call me Patrick. I guess it's the Irish in me.
Okay.
So you've had a busy day with the book sale, and you've been on another show prior to this today. So I'm sure you're tired. So thanks for coming out.
Oh, yeah. This is the important one for the day. So this is the one we scheduled this a long time ago.
So. Isaac Snowden said to say you're a great guy, by the way, just so you know.
Okay. Well, I don't know who that is, but hopefully.
Oh. And Sigmund Tor, who's a colorist, he said you're awesome. If you ever need colors, haha, he's your man. So
I'll keep that in mind, sure.
So obviously you're a well-known and well-established artist in the industry, and you started out with Valiant. But going back, what inspired you to become an artist?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess there's always some people who, when they see drawings, that kind of strikes them like viscerally. So I was one of those people when I saw someone representing something in real life in 2 dimensions through a drawing. It kind of strikes me harder than it does most people. So I figure I have to do that. I didn't grow up reading comic books, but my first exposure to all the superheroes through like Spider-Man on the Electric Company, and then the Sunday comics in the Washington Post, where you can see like the Spider-Man stories. So it was actually Spider-Man and then Justice League cartoons, and then all those Japanimation things that came when we were younger to our TV, and I think those things really struck a chord with me. So I never really read comics. When the time came to actually, when I saw my first comics, it was through Heavy Metal magazine, which you can get at the mall on a newsstand, because the specialty stores was not something that I even knew about. So I was one of those guys that always liked the whole male power fantasy and the visuals of a superhero and what they stand for. And then also like drawing. So kind of put the two together without ever having read a Marvel or DC comic when I was a kid. It was, put them together, and it was right where I should be. So it's one of those things that I was endlessly fascinated in, and just kept drawing over and over again until I got to a point where I thought I could make a run of this.
Did you have any formal education, or are you self-taught, or is it a little mix of both?
Very formal, actually. My mother, I come from a family of doctors. We're all Chinese. I was well in school, so I was kind of like the black sheep that was kind of in a little bit of trouble. So, but I was drawing instead of really hitting the books. So one time in high school, my art teacher spoke to my mother and said, there's this thing called art scholarship. So when my mom heard that, she was behind it 100%. She's like, forget the whole stop drawing because it's a waste of time. Starving artists, like, go full on with this art thing, because it'll get you into Carnegie Mellon University. So that's what I did, being pushed by mom and an art teacher to do academic artwork, which is something that I wasn't as interested in, but with their pushing, I had a very classical education. So, I think you can kind of tell when you look at my comics that the anatomy is fairly realistic, and the perspective is like very academic also. So there's like a lot of classical art training stuff in my comics, and I didn't really learn too much from comics until I was like out of college. So my kind of unique way of coming up into the business kind of reflects in the way my art looks. So yeah, that's basically how it all happened. It's just through a lot of, I don't think I'm particularly naturally gifted, and I know a lot of artists say that, but I wasn't a guy that was able to draw out of the box. I had a lot of interest, so that meant I practiced a lot, and what I couldn't do, I figured out I could figure it out academically. Attack it like a problem solve it, to get like a dynamic looking superhero figure. So that's how I came at it. And yeah, I'm one of the artists out there that probably are more classically trained. I've taken many art classes.
Which is funny because you're so well, trained. You have such a background. Obviously, you have a great resume in the industry. But you are probably the most humble guy I've ever met. The humble creator in all of comic books that I've ever met. I've never met anybody more humble than you, despite your resume and your achievements and everything. So,
okay.
By the way, apparently we are sexy beasts. Riddler says, "Hello, you sexy beasts." So let your wife know if she wasn't aware, you're a sexy beast.
And Riddler is a dude, right? So.
Yeah.
All right.
That's another thing about you. You have a great sense of humor. Because you're a little more reserved sometimes, I think it goes past people if they're not paying total attention, but you have a great sense of humor too.
I can kind of see that there'd be a little bit of a shock value to it, because I'm more of an introverted kind of guy, kind of shy. But then when I open my mouth, like it seems to come out of left field. So I think if I tell a joke, it's probably funnier than if Jim Carrey told it, because you wouldn't expect it coming out of me. So.
Well, it's because you're so reserved and you're soft-spoken. Yeah, when you come out with something, and I just remember when I first met you, and this is years ago, you were very straight-laced, very polite, always kind, very nice, but you seemed serious. And then you cracked a joke. I don't remember what it was, and I was like, oh man, that was funny. I was like, this guy's got humor. So you started with Valiant. How did you get that first gig with Valiant, and which book did you first get? Was it X-O Manowar?
No, X-Men War was the end game at Valiant.
Oh, it was Rye, right?
Yeah, so X-Men War was the flagship book. So I mean, they wouldn't give that to just anybody. So I was trying to get into the business. So I was living in Northern Virginia, Maryland area, um, and there was a show that came around all the time. So David Mazzucchelli was at these shows, and I would kind of hang out with him. I think when I showed him my work, he said that, which I don't believe to this day, but he says that the work was good enough to go, meaning that it was professional enough to start getting work. Um, so, I would just keep up with him. And then I went to San Diego Comic Con, and he was there too. So I kind of hung out with him. Um, I've been going to San Diego for like maybe a couple years prior. So I would bring a portfolio around and show it to all the artists and editors out there. And in the beginning, I wasn't expecting to get work, but you show it to everyone just to get feedback, just to get better so that you can get work. So I knew that, from what I heard, it takes sometimes maybe 5 years or something like that. So I kept my ambitions in check there, and just kept trying to get better and better. So on the third year, I was at David Mazzucchelli's Artist Alley table, and this guy from Valiant, Steve Masarsky, who was the publisher of Valiant, came by and said, like, Mr. Masarsky, I mean, Mr. Mazzucchelli, you're one of my favorites. Would you come work for Valiant? Because I'm the publisher. And then David Mazzucchelli is like basically said, like, I don't really do that stuff anymore, but this guy here does. So I gave him my sample pages, and he looked through it, and he says, "Oh, this is pretty good. Come by the booth, and then we'll have one of the art people look at it." So when I got there, there was Bob Layton and Barry Windsor Smith. So
Oh, wow.
yes, I showed it to both of them, and I showed it to Bob Layton. He said, "Well, this looks promising." So he says, "I want to have you meet someone else," and it was Barry Windsor Smith. And I was, he was he was one of my idols before I met him. So I showed my work to him, and it was strange because I thought that kind of process of him looking at it was going pretty badly, because he was really harsh, like questioning, like, why did you do this when you could have done
Really?
this? Like this is just, I don't know. And then there's a lot of like sighing, and then I said, well, it was fun, and I got close, so that's good. But then when it was all over, he says, like, yo, we really like to actually work with you. It's not just looking at your portfolio, but we want to see whether you're teachable, because you're not there yet. But I want to see if you're one of those guys that talks back, gets defensive, and he said, you're not. Like, you took all the criticism really well, and then you look like you're seriously listening to it, and that you're going to actually make some real changes. So I said, absolutely, So that was really weird, because I just had my my ass beaten by him, and then he said that it was actually very good. So I couldn't process that for a while. I was wandering around the convention like a zombie. Like, did that just happen? Because it was a swing in emotions. So that's how it all started. So I went back to my home in Maryland. Then I got the call to join them in New York if I could, and I said sure, absolutely. And I packed up and moved to New York to work in the Nobro studio, and worked there with Bob Layton and Barry Windsor Smith.
That's amazing. Your first gig out, and you're working with two legends. That's
Yeah.
Is that intimidating? I mean, are you're trying not to fanboy while you're trying to be professional and work, right?
Right. Yeah. Barry Windsor Smith was the guy that he's pretty much the artist that I liked the most. I mean, him and Jim Lee. And then there was Bob Layton, who I was less familiar with, but he actually was. I spent more time with Bob because he was actually in the office every day. Barry came by once in a while, so my time learning from Barry was actually very short. So I made sure to listen to everything he said, because there wasn't that much time. I knew there wasn't much time with him, but Bob Layton, there was like a lot of time, and the stuff that I learned from Bob was probably more important, because I think one of the reasons I liked Barry's work was because he had like kind of like a European style, and it was more similar to what I was looking at in heavy metal. But what I didn't know was that whole Jack Kirby, Buscema type of the American dynamic, over the top stuff, and that I couldn't do at all. And Bob Layton was the guy he was the guy to teach that, and then he brought me up to speed pretty quickly. So I owe a lot to both of them, but Bob for actually putting in the hours, actually making a huge difference in how I was drawing.
So at that point, apparently you got up to speed pretty quickly because they had you getting on other books in Valiant, right? And then that was when Valiant was really getting at their peak. So you must have really picked up quickly.
Yeah, it was a matter of timing. So it's kind of strange. Like my very first book that I did was Ryan the Future Force. Um, so I spent a lot of time drawing that, and by the time it actually came out, the whole bubble was still, I guess it was still in bloom. That the Death of Superman bubble.
Yeah.
So by the time my book came out, it was just cresting the peak of that and starting a little bit to go down. But there was enough of it there that my book sold 800,000 copies.
Oh wow.
So that was book number one, and then the royalty that was calculated to me was like, it was more money than my father made as a doctor. But but
well, education well spent, Dad.
what I didn't know is that that was a bubble. I mean, for my first book, I thought that's how it is in comics. It's not at all, because it was that only one time it was that big, and then it was basically in comparatively a free fall from there, where I stayed until Marvel was kind of on the in bankruptcy or whatever that position it was in was really bad. So I rode the top all the way down, and that was the first chapter in my career was getting at the top and then riding that free fall all the way down. So,
That's got to be hard on you. It's funny. That reminds me, when you were at my first show, you and Scott Hanna were sitting together, and you guys were busy sketching all day. I mean, you didn't even look up to, for a minute. You were so busy. And I had asked you, about how you guys, having achieved what you have, you're being humble and your prices are reasonable and you don't have that celebrity attitude. And I asked you why that was. And you and Scott had the same answer. You said because you were working in the industry when you didn't even know if you'd have a job the next day.
right.
It wasn't steady. You didn't know what was coming next. And I guess something like that is an eye opener where you hit it big at first, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're smacked with the bubble bursting, and it's like, hey, here's reality.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter now about the fate of the industry, and there's a lot of chatter saying that, well, it's basically over for comics, and you hear that a lot. You hear that every year, but back then, when I just started at Marvel, uh, you heard, but you didn't know that it was just chatter, because when they were talking about it, it was a reality, because there was no pattern to know, like, well, we survived it so many times. It was basically one of the first times I ever heard about it. So as far as I knew, comics were going to be like going the way of vaudeville, and we were just basically winding down, and then people would just stop reading comics because there's other more fun things to do. It's internet, there's TV, and all that stuff. Um, so it was a reality that we were just basically thinking about where to go next and what to do, like entertaining, advertising, and stuff like that, and just basically just hanging on until there was no more, and then it never completely died and started turning around and going up all the way to hitting another golden age. But we have that history behind us where we're like we've seen some bad times, and you can't afford to treat fans badly. And back then, when there were so few, it was hard to actually get good, decent sales. When someone buys your book, you just want to go out and hug them and say thank you. These days, I think because of that corporate backing of a lot of comics, you can just give the middle finger to a lot of fans if you don't like the way they look. But that never crossed my mind. I mean, I was really really thankful for every fan, because they allow
It
me.
shows.
Well, I mean, I think it's a proper attitude to have. I think people who don't act that way just don't have a long enough time horizon in comics to actually be able to see reality. You know.
I'm with you 100%. I'm sure everybody in this chat room is. We do have some questions coming. I'm going to get to in a minute. Before I do, so you just, the bubble burst and you were Valiant and everything, but your next gig is going to Marvel, which is the King. So how did that go about? How did you wind up getting the job with Marvel? And a good title too.
Yeah, I'll have to admit, the whole time I was at Valiant, I guess I was very brand conscious. Getting in at Valiant, I thought was a logical first step because you just don't go right into the big leagues. You got to pay your dues and get better. So the whole time I was at Valiant, I was like, well, when am I going to be able to move on to Marvel and DC? So I never really took my time at Valiant, never really looked around and appreciated it. And I feel bad about that because that was a really special place. I just didn't see it at the time because I was too busy looking at what's coming. My goal in actually getting onto EXO was because it would lead to Iron Man. So, I landed the flagship book at Valiant, which is X Man of War. And right about that time, Iron Man was coming back from its stint at Image Comics. So it was called Heroes Return when the book came back from Image,
Mm-hmm.
being out, and then coming back into the Marvel fold. So there was a lot of a spotlight on those books, who's going to be writing and drawing and what take they're going to have on that particular character. So, I was showing my Exo Man of War samples to, Tom Brevoort and all those people at Marvel, and they can kind of see that there's a one-to-one correlation. It's just you change the color of the costume and you'll know what you're going to get. So then they eventually chose me to draw Iron Man, and that was probably the big thing that happened to me, like that 3-year run with Kurt Busiek on such a marquee title.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you had Bob Layton of all people, who was your mentor, and then you go right to Iron Man. So that's a little ironic, right?
Yeah, actually, that never really dawned on me until much later. So
Yeah.
it was like 7 years later, like, hey, you were Iron Man. Now I'm not, because I don't think I would consider myself to ever have been known for drawing Iron Man, because I was just basically the current artist on Iron Man.
Yeah, but you get so many commissions for him all the time. Him and Wolverine, right?
As far as I know, I could have been doing a Teen Tony arc that was forgettable, but it wasn't. It's not until a decade goes by that people have such a fond memory of that certain run, and I think that's a weird thing that happens. Is like, and basically a consistent thing that happens in my life is that I don't really appreciate where I am until it's past and I can see it in proper perspective. Mm-hmm. And so that was the big thing for me, is getting on that book, and from there, that's when I kind of consider myself to have made it at the big two. So.
By the way, Sebastian said that your work is amazing.
Wow.
Keith says he loves Rye.
Oh wow, okay, that's going back a long way.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of love, man. Michael Ratliff said Sean's work is really great. I have to tell you, you're one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite people in the industry, and I remember when I first approached you too about doing my show. It's this little hole in the wall show. It's gotten a reputation, and you were really cool. You're like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, I knew you because I was getting art and stuff, but you didn't hesitate. You were really cool, and you were headlining at my show, and you were a great part of it. Thank you having you there, and it was a great experience. And I think the newer generation, no disrespect, can learn a lot from you and people of your working generation. Because, like you said, you had been through so many. It's a severe word, but the depression in comics, and I don't know if with the movies everything's inflated. I think there's a sense of comfort that they have that you didn't have. So I think they could learn a lot from you guys.
Well, yeah, especially now. I mean, we could be going into another one of those. It seems.
Yeah, some people might be learning.
So, all before. So.
So then, after Iron Man, you go from there to.
After that was Wolverine.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of odd, because I think Iron Man was not really. I mean, I don't know if people remember back then. Iron Man was not an A-list character, because he is now, because he leads the Avengers in the movies. But back then he was a smaller character, and then Wolverine was really he's an A-list character. So that was the big. And I was there for 2 different eras of Wolverine. I think my run was maybe 2 years long there. I think the first year it was very. He was wearing his blue and yellow costume, and he was fighting all sorts of monsters and aliens or whatever. And then there was a new administration that came in that said, like, we're done with that. We're doing a new, different type of Wolverine. So then I figured I was just out, because I did it a different way. So this new Wolverine wore his leather jacket, and he was very street level and fought crime, fought the mob. The claws came out less often, and so it was a completely different. Wolverine's one of those characters you can have different takes on him. So I did both, and that was strange, because for a character that's so high profile, I thought well, when they when they're gonna kick me off to get like someone like Stephen Platt to do it, because and I was able to survive on the book for 2 years. So,
You didn't
um,
survive, man. You did some amazing work. It's legendary. You have a famous cover with Wolverine running with half his mask off and everything, and you get tons of Wolverine commissions because
yeah.
you're part of history, man. You're part of Wolverine history, so don't downplay it. You didn't survive. You made it. You made the book,
But
man. Yeah.
I would say that one of the reasons I got into Marvel when I did, I think I was probably not ready for prime time. But the book I was drawing was Iron Man, and I drew like the machines very well because I'm an industrial designer, design major. So I draw like man-made objects and cars and perspective really well.
Your
So,
backgrounds are the best. I love your backgrounds. I'll
oh,
just stare at your backgrounds when you
thank you
draw
very
stuff.
much. Yeah, it's something that I understand because I do art, but then there has to be a serious technical nerd component for me to really like it. Um, so they started out me with doing Iron Man, which he's all covered up. But then as I got better drawing the figure, it kind of caught up to where everything else was, like the props and the machines. Then the characters became more and more naked as I went on. So went from Wolverine, and then I don't know what's that, but eventually I ended up with Elektra, who's just basically a woman who's naked with just some red wrapping on her.
With
So
sigh.
I did Spider-Man before that. So I think that was a kind of a vote of confidence that I can actually draw the people for the first time. I mean, to actually draw the people as well as the background stuff. So I think there was a logical flow of which characters I was allowed to work on. So yeah, that's my time
And
at Marvel there.
Dell wanted to ask, what's something you want to work on next or work with? Like, is there a title or a character specifically that you haven't worked on that you would like to?
The book I'm on now, which is Batman Beyond, I think that's a perfect blend of
With the tech,
all the
right?
things I like. Yeah, it's like this a speculative, futuristic city. So that's always really. I mean, I don't know if it's. I think it's fun to draw in general, but when you have to draw so many of them, the fact I can draw that well, I think it's um, that that really plays to my strength. Um, so I think that's the ideal book to be on, and with Dan Jurgens writing, that's where I want to be. Who knows? Like I don't know if this has a place in DC's. They're mixing everything up. I don't really poke into like what's the future of it. I know I'm drawing issue 50. Um, I'll be drawing that pretty soon. Beyond that, I think I would like to explore more of the creator-owned stuff. I mean, like what I've been doing with Wingman. I found it to be immensely creatively satisfying. Um,
I have to tell you, the writing was excellent. I mean, considering that you're really known as an artist, your first venture out, the writing is really top notch.
Thank you very much. I mean, um, you know, I didn't really know whether I could do that at all. There's never been tested before in that area. All I know is I love story. I like watching movies, and when I find the movies very emotionally satisfying, I really love that feeling. So I try to deconstruct how it works. How did it get there? And specifically down to the minutia of how it's constructed to have this type of a emotional impact in the end. Another thing that helps you succeed is if you're like a real old guy. I mean, when you're young, you tend to write a lot of stupid stuff because you don't have that much experience. I've seen a lot and I read a lot about writing and stuff, so I can kind of do okay just by having a lot of life experiences, particularly in studying writing. Um, I learned writing academically just like I learned art. And I'm glad I didn't try my hand at writing earlier because it would be kind of embarrassing.
Just so you know, any questions I don't get to, please send them at the end. We'll do the Q&A after the fact. Enrique, by the way, and Lopez said to say hello to you and myself. So we're talking about right now Wingman, which is the new creator-owned book from Sean. Sean originally was posting snippets of it, like a page at a time on Instagram last year. It was last year. And obviously following Sean on Instagram, I would read it, and I was enthralled. It was originally this property right here, is this title. And by the way, for a man who says that you don't draw people really well, the Max von Sydow character, that's like amazing likeness drawing. So you draw people excellent. So anyway, this was the original title, and this was the original printing that he had done, just to show you some sample art. And it is now, you're going to tell us about it. It is now restructured into a trade paperback with a lot of goodies in it. It's newly titled Wingman, but it's the same story with extras. I don't want to give away anything in the story, but it has a great blend of humor and drama and a nice moral message. And the humor is not easy to time it perfectly in a story, especially a story with a message that this story has, is it's not easy. And you managed it very well, and you sprinkled it in there nicely. And it was, to me, it was a more sophisticated humor too. It's not slapstick. It's thought-provoking humor. So tell us about Wingman. Tell us about the sale going on today and everything you want to talk about with that.
Okay, so I did release some stuff. I mean, the way it came about is I saw some kind of advertisement that had a screenshot of the main characters from the Seven Seal movie, and it really struck me because I think the imagination of Ingmar Bergman and then the cinematography, those characters, I guess they're very iconic characters because they've been parodied in like Bill and Ted and Monty Python. I didn't think that this was the source of it all, but when I saw it, like it really struck me, like the way they're lit. So it was like the Grim Reaper and a knight from the Crusades on a desolate, craggy beach, and they were playing a game of chess. And I thought that's really fascinating. Like I think this movie from the 1950s, or from that era, was really forward thinking because that's actually very visual, and it meant something to me. So I drew those images, and then I was going to put it up on my Instagram, but I also found out that what was so iconic about it was the dialogue, because there's the Green Reaper says like I am death, and then he goes, "You're coming for me? You want to play a game?" Like that stuff was also part of it. So I drew a little word balloon so that the image was talking. So when I put that up, people were like, "Well, where's the next part?" I was like, "Next part? This is it." So then I started doing some more, and originally it was going to be just funny stuff. Just basically, instead of playing a game of chess for his life, they were going to play a bunch of pop culture games, like a lot of video games. And I think it was actually you that said, "This is just like Bill and Ted." And I was like,
Yeah.
"What's Bill?" Well, I mean, I know Bill and Ted, but I never.
You're damn right. That's that was definitely that movie.
Bogus Journey. So then I looked up on YouTube, like, what is this Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey? And it was the same exact scene. So I was like, well, that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do anymore. But then before I threw in the towel, I thought like, well, let me go look at the original movie, whatever. And then, so I watched the original the Seventh Seal movie. And what really struck me was like the human drama in it. I was like, that's better than any of the gags that I was going to do. So I kind of changed it over to a serious drama, but also kept the humor in there because it started out that way. So there is a kind of an uncomfortable mix of serious drama and slapstick gag comedy together.
But it worked. It worked. And I didn't think the comedy was slapstick at all. I thought it was intelligent. I liked it a lot.
Okay. Well, that's good because that was the biggest question, is whether you can have the two in the same story, because they seem to be so at odds with each other.
Well, like slapstick to me makes me think of the Naked Gun and stuff like that, and it wasn't like silly like that. You know, it was well placed, it was strategically placed, and it made sense. So I don't know, maybe they'll think it's slapstick, but
so basically, I make up the story as I go along. So that's usually a red flag when someone says they made up the story as it went along. That it's going to be. What I was saying in my defense is I made up as I went along, but I wrote it over a period of a year. So I don't know how long it takes for some guy to write a Marvel script, but it could be like 3 days to a week or something like that to write a Marvel one story. I took an entire year, and every single page I would think for maybe like a couple weeks, like what's the next page going to be? So it was very carefully considered. And if you read the book, there are some like punchlines that are set up within the first 5 pages that pay off 50 pages later. So that's how much thought went into where it's going. So all the time I was drawing it, I would reconstruct the story in every single possible way to get the best story out of it. And as long as I haven't gotten to that page yet, I mean, it's only set in stone after you draw it. So I just went ahead very slowly and methodically until I got to the very end. And what you end up getting is basically a story that was a year long in the writing. inspired by everything that I saw and sought out in that year to inform the story. So it's very dense and it's very nuanced in the writing, and it's also, I think some of my best artwork where it's very dense and very nuanced in the artwork as well. So I put it on Instagram, and you can kind of just read through it quickly and get the story. And or in this printed version, you can actually linger on it a little bit, and then some of the writing ends up being like poetry. Some of the art, the images, the chemistry between the images is like a photo essay, and then there's the chemistry between the words and the images. And I work those over and over again, so that can be you can take a deeper dive into it and appreciate it in a printed form, where you can actually take your time and actually absorb it all. So,
My wife read this and loved it too.
oh, that's fantastic. I hear that quite a bit. I mean, people have been saying like, well, my wife doesn't usually read comics, but I made her read this one, and then they liked it. So I guess that says something. So,
It was also great how you brought us along in the journey with you by posting every week.
right.
I mean, you technically could have kept that all to yourself and said, no, go buy the book. You shared it with us. We were part of the journey with you. You included the fans. You made us feel like we were part of it. You were taking feedback and giving feedback. I just thought the whole experience, as well as the story is, the whole experience was great.
Yeah, when you do one of these projects, there's no editor involved, there's no art director, and there's no marketing person. You just kind of go, and the danger there is that you kind of too inside yourself. And for a first time writing, like I didn't really know whether the jokes are landing, and I didn't really know whether the characters were engaging. I didn't know if there was huge plot holes, because this is all very new to me. So when I put it up, there was a lot of feedback, and you were a big part of it. I mean, you would tell me what was funny, and then there are a lot of people who pointed out the spelling and grammar errors. So I'm very thankful for that. So in the print version of the book, I do give thanks to the followers on Instagram, and I consider them to have been not only the important, like as a focus group, but actually the editors of the book, like outsource editing.
Nice. I get editor credit.
Yeah. Of all the people, I think you spoke up probably more than most people about it. So
That's because I'm a big mouth.
but yeah, thank God, because there are a lot of people who may have read this, but then they just, they don't take the time to let you know that they read or anything. So I gave it out to a lot of people for free just to read. They don't get back to me, so I don't really know if they read it, or if they read it and didn't like it, or read it and loved it but never got back to me. With you, it's very easy. You read it and you tell me exactly what you thought of it. So,
Well, I'll be glad to write a review anytime you want. I really did love it. I enjoyed it. I literally looked forward to it every. I don't remember if it was weekly or how often you were putting it out, or every 3 days or whatever, but I literally looked forward to the newest part of it every time you put it up on Instagram. I mean, I dropped everything. I could be at work and I would stop, pull over the car. I'm gonna go read it. So it was great.
I mean, for a first-time writer, it's very hard to know whether this stuff is connecting. Like I had no idea at all whether it was working or not. But the one thing I heard a lot was that they wanted to know what's going to happen in the end, which is good because that means they're interested. They didn't want it to end, which means that they just wanted to go on so they can have more fun. Like I think that's the best feedback I could have gotten. I was happy that I thought that this is worth spending all the time on, and then also worth giving away for free, basically, because you can read the whole thing for free. It's 52 pages on two different Instagram sites. So that the difference with this.
You're supposed to be selling the book today, Sean. You're not doing a good job.
Well, I will. The printed version does have a lot of extra material in there, and there's unseen artwork, and also what I was really thrilled about was that it has like a lot of like the creator's notes on there. So I wrote it with the idea that there's a lot of people out there who want to dabble in doing their own comic, and there's a lot to know. There's a ton of stuff that I learned that I think I could pass on to people. So on every page, it tells you exactly why I chose to write this, and then I write it in a way that you can understand that those decisions, and like there's some pointers and tips, and there's even a section on how to make professional-looking word balloons. There's a very important portion about like how to handle info dumps, because stories you got to tell everyone what's happening in your story, the rules of your world, and those are all just kind of like very cold info dumps that are really boring to read. So I write like 4 or 5 different ways to turn those in from boring parts of your story to make them actually the best parts of your story. And there's like little writing tricks and tips that are very useful for that. So
So
I
on
was
top of
thinking
being
this.
a great story, it's obvious there's even writing tutorials in there. So there's a few writers in our chat now, like Gallo Romero and Enrique. I mean, if you guys pick up the book, you'll get some writing tutorial as well as getting a great story and how it works with the art part of telling the story. So, I mean, it's a 1 day sale. Tomorrow morning was at 8:59. It's done. So I'm telling you, it's scrolling right down there. Nextchapterpost.com. Go pick the book up. It's so worth it. And you also are offering 1 in 10 people can get what?
Well, if you go to my Instagram site, there's a lot of artwork that I generate there just in terms of morning warm-ups. And some of them pieces are really nice. They're basically what you would get if you did like a take-home commission from me. Except these had no client. I did them because I felt like drawing. I want to draw Phoenix, or I really want to draw, like Punchline or something like that. But there's no client for it. I draw it for my Instagram because it needs to be fed daily. So I'd have a whole bunch of this artwork. And if I would be a good use to just package it into 1 out of every 10 of those books, just throw that in there.
So it's not a page from the book. It can be DC and Marvel character properties that you commissions that you're giving out.
Yeah, it's basically.
Wow.
So and then there's also when I draw Batman Beyond, I don't draw on a typical bristle board 11x17. I actually draw one panel at a time on individual sheets of paper. So
Oh wow.
it's hard to sell that as an original because it's in 5 or 6 pieces.
Okay.
So I would take out all the nice money shot pieces and that's going in there too. So there's a bunch of Batman Beyond. So if you get one of those, it tells you what issue it's from, what page and what panel, so you can actually match it up against the book that's out in the stands.
By the way, Bernard Chang, another great artist, is here, and he said, "How many times have you watched Road Warrior?"
But that's a good point because the Road Warrior, like I learned most about what I learned about writing by watching movies, and I watch a lot of these movies. Like what draws me into the Road Warrior is the violence and the costume and the post-apocalypse. That was cool to me when I was a kid. But then I kept watching and I was like wondering, why do I keep coming back to this? I saw it already. Why don't I watch like some other crap? But what I found, there was something behind it, something that was different than other movies. So it took a long time to deconstruct it, and a long time meaning watching it 100 times. So there's a lot of stories that when I come up with these stories, there are a lot of times they're retellings of the Road Warrior and the hero's journey that's in that, the reluctant hero. So that really means a lot to me. So also Bernard Chang is on, right, I think tonight, later on, he's on Twitch. So we do this Twitch show like maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So that's Bernard Chang's Twitch channel. And we do like give away free drawings and all that stuff. And, we take turns drawing. So that's always, that's something you can check out too. So that's a lot of fun that happens there. Mostly goofball stuff, not the cool information you're getting here, which is a lot. Yeah. Basically, if we were in the same room, because it's, he's in LA, I'm here. If we were in the same room, it would be one of those things where we try to hit each other in the crotch, but that type of
See, only you could say that as serious as you just said it, though. I just find that funny as hell. Raphael said he must admit he's a writer, that one of the important things about writing is getting the feedback on what you're doing. It really helps. And it's also usually people will give art feedback, but yeah, you're not going to get a lot of writing feedback, so that's true.
Yeah, writing is very tricky. Yeah, I mean, to write, especially in comics, you have to write very efficiently. Like in a novel, you can kind of just go all over the place, and then the bigger your novel is, the more money you can charge for it. But you have very limited real estate, and then you gotta make those scenes and the dialogue seem like natural in real life, but you're actually imparting tons of information. You're trying to make it feel casual, and so there's no time to waste a page or a line of dialogue. So yeah, it has to be very tight that way, and yeah, there's a lot to learn, but it's fun, and it's fun learning it too. So
Gallo asked, he said, I see a lot of Chinese heroes in a lack of Chinese heroes in comic books. I'm sorry. Do you feel that there could be a more Asian inspired hero or more Asian inspired heroes in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's, Bernard Chang is, who was just commenting before. That's been one of his mission statements from day one. Um, and yeah, it's something that seems to be important now more than ever. Um, if you see a lot of Asian, if we ever do make it into mass media, there's a certain kind of role that we play. I mean, you'll see us as the medical examiner. We're not often shown as cops or whatever. In terms of like, we're never really the lead. So, we can be the guy who helps the guy who's in lead. But um, yeah, absolutely, for sure. I think, you know, I haven't been that good about increasing that visibility in the past. It was, I think, I kind of see myself as just as an artist, regardless. And sometimes I forget I'm Asian, so I just, I'll just draw. And the same thing, like when you see Jim Lee, his work, you wouldn't know he's Asian. I mean, Jim Lee could be like Stan Lee's brother, right? So, and also you don't see too much of him pushing a certain type of, and Frank Cho as well. I mean, you never even know. So I'm just another one of those artists that are kind of working in that same vein. And then it's time to wake up and say, like, it's time to represent. I mean, it's the right thing to do. So,
they've made small attempts. They've made small attempts where they had the Asian Superman, and there were even in Justice League there was and the Chinese League they had, but everything fizzled out. Nothing came of it really. They haven't pushed for these characters the way they do for others. So I mean, you're writing now. You're drawing as you always have. You've got some creator-owned property under your belt. Any thoughts on maybe creating some Asian heroes, your own book, doing something on your own, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or something?
Yeah, I think as far as, I kind of avoided Kickstarter and Indiegogo with this project, mostly because everyone can see how much it funds. And you have to be open to the idea that it could flop, and then it's such a public failure. So that's why we're not doing that for this.
No offense, but that's typical you. Yeah. You undervalue yourself. I don't get that. I mean, everybody here, look, dude, you were surprised how quick your following on Instagram went. You have over 40,000 people following Instagram. That's not somebody that should be worrying about a lack of success. That's all I'm going to tell you. I mean, I appreciate your being humble, but my God.
Maybe my second or third time out, I'll think differently. But, with their kind of debut thing, kind of have to be very careful. So yeah, it's probably would be time to take a little bit more risk with the next one. And I think, yeah, definitely more Asian representation, I think, is something that's probably going to happen. This first project, I didn't really think too much on that. So if you read it, it's about like two guys. And there are women in there, but they have no speaking role. And they're essentially unconscious the whole time. So I look back and there are some issues in it. It's this story is about two white guys. And so...
well, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just write something else later that shows another aspect. I forgot, you actually reached out to me and asked me medically because I'm a nurse, to try to have the accuracy of terminology or that would be used in a hospital. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's great. The thing about crowdsourcing all of your, using Instagram and leveraging it. People don't want to they don't want to give away their product and don't want to give away any spoilers, but I kind of involved everyone. I looked around to see who I know that knows information about whatever. So this was like, I needed to talk. I need some medical jargon, and I was like, well, I know.
I was very flattered that you came and asked me. I was happy to help in my very small way, but I just thought it was cool. Right. The whole thing was cool. Hey, Carlos. Carlos Ramos is an artist. Very talented. He said hi, all.
Hey, Carlos. Good to see you.
Lady again. I have a very loyal group of people that every show are in the chat room, and they're engaged and they're asking questions. And we had a contest, and they're called my Rogues Gallery, my Q&A Rogues Gallery, because they rib me sometimes. They throw little shots at me, so they're my rogues, not my allies. So he's one of them, and they're all in here, and they're great people coming out. So you have this book coming out. It is out now. It's on sale. You have 1 in 10 chance of getting some phenomenal art from Sean Chen. It's got all the writing tips in it, as well as the story. You said added art. I think the book is fantastic. I bought this new version of it.
Very much. I much appreciate it.
Oh no, please.
Order, so yeah.
I really hope you write more. I really hope that you decide to start your own, universe, whatever it may be. I will be there 100%. I was very impressed with your first time writing, right away. And again, I'm just going to remind everybody, scrolling on the bottom is Sean's Instagram. He doesn't use Facebook much, but that's his Facebook. And again, www.nextchapterpost.com. You can even go right now while we're on the show, and you can go buy a book. It's not expensive. It's worth the money, and 1 in 10 chance to get art that you'd have to pay for a commission. So I'm telling you, 1 in 10 is not those are good odds. You're not going to get odds like that anywhere else. So I'm telling you, go buy the book. Go check it out. We have to support people that are trying to support their dream, and the writing quality is so good that I'm just telling you, it's not the same old stuff. It's fresh. It's new. The humor is great. If I looked forward to it on Instagram, like Sean had said to me, he goes, he didn't know if I like it because he figured I was just a superhero guy, which I'm not. I love this book. I really do. And I've read it a couple times. My wife read it. I'm happy to have this because you know what? When this thing goes really big time, I have like the original printing.
Yeah, that's a very limited edition one. Yeah.
We go in Sizzler.
Minuteman Press in Forest Hills made that. So
What's that?
it was put together at Minuteman Press in Forest Hills. So it's one of those jobs where I kind of like put it together myself. So
yeah, but again, you were putting it on Instagram and you were just giving it out for free. So I mean, but it's not the same as having it in a collected edition. I'm sure most people agree. Digital will never ever be as good as holding a copy in your hand. And as great as this is, now you're going to have a trade paperback form with all the extras, and that's just going to be nice to have and hold in your hand and read, and the smell of a fresh printed book. I mean, those are all the great things that go on for me that I love. So
yeah, thank God. We can put stuff on the internet for free, but then if it weren't for the people who really love to actually have something in their hands, there would be no way for me to monetize it. So
yeah,
very
well,
thankful for that.
I want everybody to know I'm not being biased. I promise you, I'm not. I'm not kissing up. I'm not being biased. I really enjoyed the story, and I think you will too. So I'm just being honest.
Else about it, these days, you can stream so much stuff on Netflix. You can see stories on so many different platforms, and the number of stories that we're inundated with daily. I mean, you can watch like 5 or 6 different shows in one day, binge watch all that stuff. Nothing gets nothing gets greenlit now if it's ordinary. The same old thing is not going to cut it anymore. And I think I always thought that I would tell a very straightforward, ordinary story, like a sci-fi thriller. When I started doing this because of the way it came about, and there was no risk because I wasn't going to try to do it for money, that allowed me to do something that ended up being very eccentric, very unusual. So when you read it, it's going to be an experience because it's not something that you can see coming. Like you have no idea where the story is going because it's kind of it kind of comes at you from the side, and then I think
it takes a turn.
Of that, yeah. So in that sense, I can safely say that you've never really seen or read anything like it. But usually that's a bad thing. But in this way, it still all holds together and it comes together, and you do get that emotional satisfaction at the end that you should get from a good story. So, people would like the fact that it's something different than what they've been seeing their whole life in terms of watching movies and reading books.
You know what's great about the writing too, though? Everything is usually boxed. It's either a comedy or it's a drama or whatever. But real life, for all of us, it's everything. You could be laughing 1 minute and 20 minutes later you're upset about something, or a tragedy happens or whatever. And even in the midst of a tragedy, sometimes you find something that is ironically humorous or something. And the story reflects that. there are some serious elements going on, and then there's still those moments of levity, and that's real life. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, we're dealing with the Grim Reaper, but
Yeah.
I mean, but it's real life situations where it's not as cut and dry as everything's laugh and slapstick, and then or everything's serious and drama. It's a mix of everything, and when you read the book, you're gonna feel all that. So I thought that was really top notch.
Oh, thank you. I mean, like, it's basically 50 pages to try to get you to have some, like, to go on an experience in 50 pages. So it does try to, hit all points. Yeah, and a lot of times they would have a very heavy drama moment, and it's immediately preceded by a cheap laugh.
See, I wouldn't say cheap, but
so
yeah.
In that way, like, I honestly say that if you try to do a serious drama, it can come off melodramatic, and when people spot that, they hate that. I mean, you get a lot of like daggers for that, because it can become, I guess, what the kids call cringy, if you try to go big with emotion. So in order to keep that from happening, I would immediately follow any serious moment with something ridiculous, just to kind of say, like, never really meant that before anyways.
Mark Torres, on the subject of digital or the fact that you could buy a printed book, he says you can't get digital comics signed unless you want to ruin your tablet. So that's true. If you don't get the printed copy, you can't get it signed by Sean. So, and Sean is he'll be at shows once everything opens up. So bring the book by.
I did do, as an advertisement for this comic, on my Instagram, there's a 17 panel comic. It's on my Instagram. If you see it, you can see it starts out with an image of an overhead shot in a subway of one person reading a paper comic and another person reading one on an iPad. And it looks like a comic book panel. If you read it, it kind of really dives deep into the difference between digital and printed. And if you ever wonder, when someone says, I like to hold it in my hands, when I hear that, I'm like, I don't get it. Because why is that a thing, to hold it in your hands? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, I think comics actually look better on a digital screen because it's illuminated from the screen. So I took a deep dive into exactly what that process is, and in a very fun. And that's an advertisement for this book, because I did release the comic for free on Instagram. So I'm trying to explain to them why they need to buy another one in print. So.
And how do you feel about art, digital versus traditional?
I actually like. I think my artwork personally looks better on digital. I'm not sure what it is about it, but from an artist's perspective, it does take a step down when it's printed. But that's just me. But I explained it in that little mini comic that it's because there's a part of our brain called the ventral striatum that it's responsible for valuation, and I don't know what it is, but it's a part that you have to stimulate through touch to be able to feel like quality, like paper quality and stuff like that, and the smell is something that doesn't get stimulated when you have a digital version. So there's, if you have a person reading a digital comic and a person reading a paper comic, and put them on the brainwave with all the things on their head, you will see that area lights up for the person reading a paper comic, but not so much for the person reading a digital comic. So there is actually scientific data that proves that print is better than digital.
There you go. The debate is over. By the way, Andy Lee is with us. Sean's got a cool signature. Andy Lee does all my promo images, and Andy Lee has letsdothis.com that I mention all the time, and he's honestly one of the truly nicest people I know. He's a very kind, very giving, very kind, good person. So go check out www.letsdothis.com.
Yeah, I mean, all that, he gives you like these pop culture tours for all things nerd centric. So
yeah,
and and
and he reviewed my con well, so I have to say good things. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he's often in our Twitch stream with Bernard Chang, and I do the Twitch stream. He's often there, and then it's a good guy, and I see him a lot on. He's just basically, I guess he's in different rooms all the time. You can find.
He's a busy man.
Exactly.
Gallo Romero asked, is Wingman also inspired by Piers Anthony on a Pale Horse, which is a very famous tale?
Yeah, actually, I'm not familiar with that. Like, I'll have to admit, I'm not that well read. Um, it could be because, uh, when I'm coming at this book, Wingman, it's basically the medieval knight and death, and I didn't see the original, but it's been parodied so many times. So
Right.
parodying that might be parodying the same thing. I'm kind of picking up on that, so I'm probably inspired by someone who was inspired by that. So indirectly, I'm sure it's all thrown in there. So. Um, yeah, I'll look that up though. That's probably a good idea for me to do.
So you said you were discovered pretty much by Leighton and Windsor Smith, but who is someone that you've never met that you would totally fanboy over if you got to meet them?
Well, I think most likely it would be outside of our industry.
Okay.
I have a lot of um, you know anyone who is very successful because they have a brilliant mind. I want to meet them all. Just to see how their brain works. You get to see them talk in more scripted forms, but sometimes like you would just want to know if you're having dinner with them how their brain works and see how it's different from yours.
All right. So I'll have
But
dinner with you if you want to know what it is to be with a genius. Actually, I love looking at these things that you invent. I mean, the squirrel feeders and the toys. You made the little model toys, for your kids with the mold. You do a lot of really cool science things on your Instagram stories.
yeah, it all comes from the same place. Like I said, like I'm a creative person, but there has to be a serious nerd component for me to be interested. So if there's something like if it's just an art form where you're just kind of free form painting, like abstract painting, not into that at all because there's no boundaries and there's no rules to know whether you succeeded. So the type of artwork that I get into, you have to look through spreadsheets and data, and you have to learn like mechanical processes. So I'm interested in building a lot of things. So I do a lot of like renovations. Like I built these shelves back here, and
Oh wow, they look bought,
uh,
and not IKEA
and I know I
either.
have that squirrel video that I have with the where it puts on the screen mask. Like
Yeah.
that one went. So yeah, actually, I make like $50 a month from that video because it's being represented by an agency that pushes those things out. So
Oh really?
so yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I used to be a comic book guy exclusively because I thought like you have to go all out, all in on one thing. But then I think within the past 10 years, started to really diverge into a lot of different interests. But the
Well, you
comic,
do marketing as well.
I guess so. Yeah. So um, it's all basically creative things that have a technical component that you have to master, and that interests me.
Um, Sorry, my rogues gallery. There's a running joke through all the shows. Geraldo Borges, an artist in Brazil, now lives in Chile. I was talking about him and I going out to dinner at the New York Con next time it goes on, and he said he loves Red Lobster, but there isn't one out there. So the running joke is that I'm going to treat everybody to Red Lobster. So you've been invited to be part of the group that I apparently am going to pay for. I have a feeling by the end of the year I'm going to have a tab of like $4 million for about 300 people at Red Lobster.
I
um,
haven't been. There's Red Lobster. There's some around here.
Long Island is a few. I used to go
Oh
to the Sizzler right near you on Metropolitan Avenue because I used to live right near you all the time, and they
yeah, there's
closed
no.
that down.
It closed down. That was the last one that's I think maybe on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yep. Yeah. All you can eat shrimp. Damn it, no more. So you're a pretty even keel guy, but at a convention, what would you say is the craziest or most out there experience you've had at a convention with a fan or another creator or
Um, well, I mean, I would say the thing that kind of is the most unusual. There are a lot of uh, fans who want commissions drawn, so they'll spend time finding out who's just the right guy. But there's like one more thing they have to check, and that's is whether you're okay with drawing certain things. And I'll admit in the past, I thought kind of this person really, really wants a certain type of thing drawn, and it's a little bit kind of weird and fetish like, and it looks like this poor guy has no outlet for this thing that he legitimately wants. Can't do it himself. He needs someone to draw it, So I was like, I'll draw that for you, but I don't do that anymore. And they also have to swear up and down that they're never going to release this type of thing. And it's nothing horrible, but it's just like they want to see this person like wearing this type of outfit, like a Betty Page outfit, but it's Mary Jane. Like, oh, that's kind of weird. But whatever floats your boat, the fact that you have to come to a person who can make this happen for you, I thought it was a legitimate type of service that someone can provide. So there's that. There's a lot of that going on because there's a lot of those types of people in this business who maybe have to really work up the courage to ask for a certain thing. So,
well, some of the stories we've had, and Riddler just mentioned it, we've had a story about fornicating pandas and humans. So, I mean, there's some crazy commission requests, and these people don't seem to have any shame when they ask for them. So,
but I tend not to do it for those people who are very who don't have it. There are people who kind of bring it up very sheepishly, and I was like, oh, this is kind of sad, and this person can really, could really use this. So, so yeah, that's not something I do anymore because I think that that we don't really own a lot. We don't own these characters, so just representing them that way, I can't really fully trust that person to keep it completely private. So yeah, I don't really do that stuff anymore. So I think that's like one time someone came up to me and had me sign their baby. I think it was
baby. Really?
Yeah, I think it's just he thought it would be funny, so I did it. And I think just recently someone showed me a tattoo that they had on their arm of something that I drew. It's kind of off-putting because it's something you did and became permanent on someone. So that's kind of strange. But
see, some people would have found that like, oh wow, it's immortalized on this person until they're old and wrinkly and they pass. So, but you went the other way. You were like, yeah, it's a little off-putting. It's a little weird.
Yeah, I think if he asked me to say like, I'm going to tattoo this, I want you to draw it first. Like, I don't think I'd be able to do that because that's some crazy amount of pressure. But I think what this guy did was he probably did a Google search for a certain character, and then picked the one he liked the most that would fit well on it, that he would have as a tattoo, and it happened to be mine. So it only came to light recently that I was the one that drew it because I think he saw it on my Instagram and then DM'd me with a photo of it. So it's an honor, and it's a good way to do it because I didn't know it was going to be permanent on someone's body.
Yeah, well, it's immortalized. So, who were your art influences? Who were you artistically really impressed by following, and who would you say had the most impact on your style?
There have been a couple of people. I would say like for the entire time I was at the tail end of Valiant, all the way through Marvel, was Travis Charest, the Canadian.
Yes,
He's the nicest guy, and I told him as much. Oh, my son's name is Travis, so that's how much he meant to me. So that was so important that it keeps you practicing and striving, and that lasted for over a decade. So if he never existed, I don't know where I would be because I spent maybe a decade and a half just trying to be exactly like him and never really making it, but all along the way getting pretty far. And then lately it's been Olivier Coipel. It's a similar type of like complexity and like a lot of rendering, but a lot more organic and very movement based. So I kind of gravitated toward him a lot. I think maybe in the past 4 years. So that's been an obsession for the past 4 years. And then I think most recently, and then there's other Lanil Yu, and then Pepe Larraz is someone I discovered like just last year that whose work is amazing. And yeah, I mean I can't understate the importance of finding these people, and then kind of obsessing over them, and because it makes you inspired to draw every single day. And the benefit of that is you just slowly improve because you're just kind of indulging in this obsession, and then while you're doing it, you're doing that indulging the obsession on these pages that you're turning into Marvel and DC for money. So,
My mother's on, and she has a question for you. If you
okay.
weren't an artist, what line of work would you be in?
Have I met you? I met
She's
either
at the
your mother or
show.
your. Okay.
You've met
Yeah.
every
She's
my whole family's at the show. You've probably met them all. Yeah, she's
they're
usually
all
walking around with my daughters.
yeah, yeah. That's the whole family affair. Yeah, I was actually driven to your show by your brother. So,
Hmm.
um, and what was, her question was,
If you
uh,
weren't an artist, what line of work would you be in?
um, well, I was trained as an industrial designer, and so that's a great field to be in. It's sort of like car design or car styling, but you do it for everyday products like computers, laptops, and, like blenders, vacuum cleaners, stuff like that. Just designing the form of those. Um, I do a lot of home renovation type stuff,
Mm.
and if it had to be drawing, though, it'd probably be advertising or like animation storyboards. So I do storyboards for animation and maybe storyboards for either movies or animation would probably be something, and video game design too. Those are all very related to drawing, but not in comics. And coincidentally, all make more money than comics.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people that they had the dream of working for the big two, and then they did, and they're like, you know what? Now I'm on the side. They're doing other jobs, marketing and things like that, and to
Yeah.
make even more money. I think it was Keith who asked. Oh, Keith had two questions. One of them, I believe, he said, "Is are you reading anything currently? Is there any? Are there any titles that you're really into right now?"
Well, I mean, one of my favorite artists, Pepe Larraz, I would buy anything that he draws. And when I read it, I mean, I am generally entertained by the story, but I'm basically trying to see how he solves a problem that he's given to it from a writer, how he handled it. So, I'm reading the story as far as knowing um, how he's making decisions. So it really is really about the art for me. And I'll buy anything where the art is something that strikes my fancy. Uh, my favorite comic was Watchmen. So anything in that vein, I would read. So if I hear like a lot of buzz, like you got to read this, whatever, and then I'll go on Comixology and I'll just buy it within a couple of minutes and read it all digitally. Um, so I mean, I like Donny Cates's God Country, or is that what it's called? Yeah. So whatever people are talking a lot about, I'll check out to see what the buzz is about, and if people really like it, it usually is pretty good.
The buzz is about Wingman, people. The buzz is about Wingman. Keith also asked, when you did the X-Men book, The End, was there any talks that they were going to announce that Gambit was a Summers brother than a clone of Sinister, and how cool was working with Chris Claremont?
um, Well, I mean, I'll answer the second part. It's a little bit off-putting because all the stories that Claremont did, I thought were, I have this idea of what writing is like. Basically, there's no such thing as just writing through. It's basically writing and revising. You make an outline, you have a high concept, and then you kind of revise and revise endlessly until you distill it down to, with comics, you have a limited amount of space for the art and the writing, so you kind of have to distill it down to just the cream of the cream. That was not what Chris Claremont was doing. He was, uh, I got the sense that he was just going and going, and he has a brilliant mind. So in that sense, the story is kind of like a wild romp of an adventure because it's kind of just free flowing. I can tell because he would bring stuff up early on and never really pay it off or never get back to it. So there was a dangling, lots of dangling threads. So I can tell that it wasn't something that was very work. Because, like I said, my favorite work was Watchmen, and that clearly was basically written and revised and revised and revised, and um, it seemed like it was revised exhaustively to make the most use of those 12 issues. Um, and that was kind of what was used to, and kind of what I determined great writing to be. So writing with Claremont was really different because he just kind of because he's so brilliant, he just like uses the keyboard like a piano keyboard and just goes, and then you get this, and you just draw it, and you never knew what was going to happen next or where you're going to go, but it's an adventure. So that was that's a real bucket list thing because he's a you know living legend status writer, and you get to collaborate with him for it was 18 issues. Um, And as far as the other question about who was what's brother, I don't know.
So that makes me think, have you had any major comic book writers read the Wingman, read your story at all, give any feedback?
uh, I haven't. You know, I I don't really know when you give someone something to read, uh, how often they read it. you know, I've given it to a lot of writers, not really asking for feedback, but just because they're my friends and I want to show them something that I made, and I don't ask them to read it. I don't ask them for feedback, and I'm assuming that either they didn't read it or they read it and they're like, I'm not going to say anything.
Sean.
I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping it's the former rather than the latter. Or maybe that sometimes you read it and they really love it. It's like, I got to get back to Sean. But then life gets in the way and then you never get around doing it. Like Tom.
Honestly, I think that's probably it because in my dealings with creators, it 9 out of 10 times it's not intentionally blowing you off. They look at it, they feel all right. I'll get back to him a little later, and then they forget, and the next thing you know, 6 months later, and they haven't gotten back to you unless you remind them.
Right.
So I think it's probably that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that happens because I do that. So I'm guilty of
I
that.
wasn't gonna say that, but you'll see my message. I get nothing from you,
Yeah.
and I'll have to remind you 2 weeks later. Hey, did you check my message?
I 100% intend to get back to you until I forgot.
Yeah. um, Mark asked, "Do you prefer working off full detailed scripts or just plot points, like loose scripts, like outlines?"
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few artists that likes everything spelled out. And I think ideally you can, as an artist, you can do the best job when the writer just kind of gives you an outline and then lets you kind of determine what's best visually to get to that story point. I think that makes sense that that's the best way to do it. But I think that the comic book world is a little bit strange to me. Uh, like weird things happen. And it doesn't really like the physics and the things that happen in the world of comics are so unusual to me that I don't think I'd be able to come up with something like I think I'm writing as if it were a movie, and I was like, this wouldn't happen in a movie. So, but comic book writers can tell you what's okay in a comic book. So, and just to have it all in there, I can usually take what they've written and make the best of it. So you can get the best of both worlds if they spell it out completely, and I can pick and choose how to keep the overarching message across, and then kind of add stuff that I think makes it better, and then get rid of some of the stuff they wrote that I don't think is going to make a difference.
How do they react to that if you do that?
Well, I think it's really intimidating working with someone like Dan Jurgens. he's he's an artist himself, and he's also a brilliant writer. And I know that we have different ways of telling a story. And when I turn stuff in, I can only think of him thinking like, "Wow, this is not how I would do this at all." Um, but he's always very complimentary. But I just know for a fact that he would do it differently because we just are different types of people.
Right. But you
But
seem to be working well, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean he's loving it. So and I love our collaboration. I think that's the idea. Is that maybe if you're a writer, it's not like you're Stanley Kubrick. I think with directors, you have an obligation to yourself to realize exactly what you see in your head, and you need everyone to fall in line. I think that's how a movie director works. But when you're a comic book writer, I think you write a story, and you have no rights to how it turns out practically, visually. The only thing you can expect is that the major story points are get gotten across, but you're not really allowed to dictate shot for shot
right.
on. And they understand that, and I think they actually even like that because you can get they don't expect it, and then they also get pleasantly surprised because we do what we do, and they do what they do, and then put it together, you have a comic that's the best of both worlds.
And I know you have Chris Sotomayor coloring that book too. He's another great guy. So if you had your choice of what creator team you would work with, inker, writer, colorist, who would they be?
I mean, I have to call out who's my favorite of all those different disciplines.
Well, not necessarily favorite, just who do you think you would work well with? Who do you think would work best with you? And that's not alienating anyone. It's just
Okay.
saying,
Well, I'm one of those guys. Like I think write a project that's my own, I do get to be like Stanley Kubrick and basically just demand a lot from my actors to realize my own vision. So in that case, I would be tempted to take over all of those myself. Um,
You just played it safe, Sean. That was a nice, good dodge there.
but it's also, I think the safe answer would be that I love the people I work with, but as an artist and a writer, I think it's tough. It's a tough collaboration, and it's not really done anywhere outside of the states. It seems like in Japan or in Europe, the person who draws it writes their story, and then there's one guy who's in charge, and then he basically lords over all the people in the studio, and just forces them to do what. And that seems to be the way it's done everywhere else because
Like a Marvel editor.
yeah, it seems to make sense that way. So the fact that we have a collaboration here, I think it's good in a way, but I don't expect it when I open the comic that it's close to what I had in my mind because that's not the point. It's a collaboration to get product out there on a timely basis, and we're supposed to work as a team. So you know. So I don't, for my own project, I probably wouldn't assemble a team because I think I can do all of those things. and now, and
Well, so far you did everything other than coloring the book. So
yeah, the coloring thing is something I just started kind of recently. So, um, yeah, I mean,
take Chris's class.
yeah, I took Chris. Yeah, he's a great teacher. I learned so much from him.
Yeah,
His class at a comics experience.
yeah.
It, basically got me from a guy who didn't know one side of a mouse from another, and then I was able to actually color. I can probably color a book at a company after taking that one class.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just one class? Wow. I might want to have
I
to go. I could save a lot of money if I have Chris teach me, but then he'd be out of work doing my jams.
yeah, he's a great teacher. Yeah. So
He's a good guy too.
yeah, yeah. Totally
Keith had asked when Valiant came back, they were doing their resurgence and come back. Did they ask you to come back on a book, Rye or anything, or?
Um, I think there's a perception that I'm off doing bigger and better things. Like I remember Dinesh Shamdasani, who basically was the publisher there for a while. He had me do little bits and little things, and then I told him like I asked him like, well, you have anything else available? And he goes, yeah, a lot of stuff, but we just assumed that it wasn't a question of whether you're qualified to, because I assumed like it would be in his best interest to separate himself with Valiant from the past, because you want to show that you've moved on, and you don't want to bring anyone else along from the past. I told him like I completely understand that, so don't feel bad if that's the case. And he's like, that's not the case at all. It's like it was always an availability issue. Like we just assume that you're doing stuff for Marvel or DC or advertising, and then there was just no time. So I don't know whether it's telling the truth or not, but either way, he's not there anymore. So, but yeah, I did some stuff for them, like little covers and things like that.
And what are your thoughts about the future of the industry right now, especially with DC and the things going on there, dropping 20% of their titles and
Yeah,
going digital a little bit?
yeah, I think we kind of all kind of see that coming. I mean, the sales are always kind of a little bit on shaky ground, despite what people say. You can kind of see that. One thing that this taught me about this pandemic we're in was it was strange for me to see like a desperation amongst people, like where am I going to get my comic fixed? Marvel and DC, they're not coming out on a regular basis. There was almost like I can see daily an effort from a lot of people to find a solution. And I was like, what are you trying to find a solution for? Like I thought this was kind of on its way out. But what I learned is absolutely not. There is a certain number of people who really love their comics and need them. And that's really heartening to hear. So there will always be comics, and there will always be comics printed. So the medium will never die. The distribution might change. The fact that Marvel and DC has been the juggernauts for decades, that might change. There's a lot of people who are coming up from behind, who are in the ranks of the indies, and self-publishing is easier now more than ever. printing on demand, getting stuff to the people, circumventing distribution routes, and not having to have a huge titanic corporation that can only move in one way for so long. You can have smaller companies that come up and are very maneuverable. I can see Kickstarters are doing really well. You won't sell the fraction of the amount that you get from working at Marvel and DC, but you don't need that huge amount of money.
You won't have the overhead either. Yeah.
Yeah, all gone. So you're not getting your whatever. Like in the end, you might get like, I don't know, 6% of the money that comes from a comic. You get a huger portion, and then you don't have to, like all that's very exciting. So it's an exciting time in comics now, and I had the choice to be out of it, to do advertising, and also make enough of a living doing other things. But I choose to be in comics, and I choose to be drawing comics, and I will do them if it means drawing them for free. All I want is for people to read it, and then that's the truth. No matter where I go, what I do, I'll be doing comics, even if there's money in it, and even if it costs money for me to put out. I mean, I would spend a little bit of money to get people, and it's not because I'm out to serve people. It's because I just need to create stuff, and I need people to read it. So, I hope there's more people who think in that sense. So, comics have been going in a certain way for maybe a couple of decades. So, for the first time, there's a major change happening. We're on the precipice of a whole new industry paradigm right now, and I'm looking out. And it used to be that I'm worried about whether there's going to be any more comics to draw. Now, I don't care so much because at least I'm going to be putting it out.
See, I agree with you. Out of all the answers I've gotten, I agree with you 100%. Comics will always be made. The industry may change. The system of distribution may change. Some titles may come and go, whatever. But I agree. This industry is not going anywhere. There are too many people that love it, rely on it, depend on it, have passion for it. I just think there'll be some changes, but you know what? They're going to be good changes. And it's going to be more creativity and less corporate control, I think, which is just going to help the industry flourish.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is when someone gets out of working for Marvel and DC, you're basically doing a comic for a corporate structure, basically working with a writer who's working within that corporate structure. So now you have the artist or writer who have gone off on their own, and they're going to kickstart something or, Indiegogo something. And this is a project that they put together or that one person put together. And then one thing that's going to be injected in there that was not there before is a tremendous amount of passion. And then when you see the book, you're going to see that passion. It's going to be there. It's undeniable that this is better than anything they were doing before, even though you may not recognize the character. So that's something to look forward to. And that's exciting to me.
A little off topic for a moment. As we know, you even asked, unfortunately, the Long Island Railroad it's probably about a half a mile, but these guys blare the horns as they come through the cross, the streets. So Riddler said there should be a drinking game on my show where the creators and I have to drink it and take off a portion of clothes after every train whistle. That's not this show. You may want to start your own one, and nobody wants to see that. So thanks for the offer, but I think we'll pass.
Has it always been like that, or is that a recent thing with the
No, you know what it is some of them lean on it, and I think they like to wake everybody. It's all night. Because what it is the LIR is a straight run here, but you have so many streets that cross it that they're honking the horn at the one that's 5 blocks that way. They're honking the horn at this one. So, and there's nothing I can do about it unless you want to see me dripping with sweat and really nasty. And my family is like, oh my God, what's that smell? So, it's just the way it goes.
Where I live, it's between LaGuardia and JFK. So we have airplanes flying over. So, it's, I think I just kind of got used to it.
And the thing is, it stands out even more because I'm far out in Long Island in Bayport, so we don't have like a ton of traffic and other noises that make everything sound commonplace. Like when I lived in Queens, a few blocks from you, I was right off Woodhaven Boulevard. there was always a car crash or noise or whatever. Penelope and Woodhaven. So, but here it's quiet. You hear crickets in the background, and then boom, boom. So I'll tell you what, Riddler, you have the drinking game at home in your privacy, not in front of a camera on us. All right, because I want to keep my vision. What do you think about the future of conventions? And what do you think about these virtual cons?
I guess you have to understand what a convention means to an artist. We work really, really long hours to get these monthly books out. We work kind of in isolation usually. So, I'm working, this is my basement. So this is my basement studio. I'm just here. Sometimes I don't open my mouth for until my wife gets home from work. And it's very isolating. So getting out to a convention means that you can connect with, most importantly, your fans, just to know how you're doing. Work-wise, I mean, just whether your stuff is connecting with people. Also, you get to meet editors, Marvel and DC editors. Sometimes the only time you get to meet them is at these conventions because everything's done. You're hired over email and you talk on the phone sometimes if you're lucky, but it's mostly just email. I don't even know what my editor looks like. But, yeah, you can be working for an editor for 4 years and not know what they look like until the right convention comes along. And then, so it's a chance, like if you were one of those guys that sets up at Artist Alley and draws, then you can actually make money. That's an important part that augment our low pay in comics. And another thing is well, I mean, just in general, just getting out and connecting with all sorts of people. And also the lineup work. I mean, a lot of the future work you get is meeting in the bars at a convention. So that's all gone now. and I kind of think it's gone. But I was just saying in another interview that I can't think of a worse place to be during a pandemic because there's a thing called con crud. You just get the cold convention because there's so many people. Like the New York Comic Con, you're just shoulder to shoulder with people. You get quite often get sick afterwards, but that's usually a cold, and those are self-limiting. But now there's something that's even more contagious, and it could knock you out permanently.
Right.
So things will come back, like restaurants or whatever. But a convention is not something that will come back until the worst thing you can get is a cold. So.
Well, that's why mine's on hiatus because I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't want anybody getting sick, but I want everybody to feel comfortable too. It's not even about getting past, getting a vaccine or whatever. You just want people to feel comfortable. You want them to feel safe being back in that environment. And I mean, that's the point, right? The convention's supposed to be a positive experience, and we don't want the stress or anything that's going on. Raphael says he's gotten the con crud a couple of times. Raphael is press at a lot of shows. You've met him, actually. He's been press at my show as well with the Bitten Apple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. So you recognize him when you see him. I mean, not his crazy picture there, but
But I'm really feeling that. I think I'm missing the conventions. It's an important part of my life and what I do. I really look forward to them, and sometimes they're the bulk of the convention vacations I take during the year. So really feeling it. Like if there's a way for them to come back, I would be thrilled.
I agree. Well, hey, I agree. I'm on. By the way, mine will probably be in Queens, so you won't be going far for the next one.
Oh wow, that'd be fantastic.
And it'll be 2 days.
Oh,
so, yeah, it's going to be good. I've been grateful. A lot of artists are already big name artists are reaching out. When's your show? When's your show? Don't have an answer for them, unfortunately, but it's nice that they're reaching out. So.
Well, you put on a great show. I mean, you're one of the few shows that feeds the artists. And I mean, not just feeds them with like a feed bag, but you put out so, but yeah, there like once in a while you come across a guy who treats artists like rock stars, and that's great. But I just can't think that you're gonna lose your shirt doing that. But I appreciate it though. Believe me.
I'm not gonna lose my shirt doing that.
Okay, because I mean, you basically have to bring enough people into the door to make your money back. And I know the margins are kind of thin on a lot of conventions, so I really understand cheap hotels and no food and not even any bathroom breaks. I understand where that comes from because they're not, it's just, and then also I understand that there are media guests there that demand and maybe even deserve better treatment because of how many people they bring to the door. The fact that you kind of go against that is a real testament to how and you're such a patron of the arts. So that's
Oh shucks, I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but thank you. I appreciate it.
that.
I do appreciate it, and you've been really humble, and I mean, honestly, and I know you probably don't see it this way, but when I approached you, I mean, I know you a little better now than I did then, obviously. You could have been like, yeah, thanks, one day show, I'm good. But you weren't. You were really cool, and if it wasn't for having people like you there, I probably wouldn't have been a very successful first show. I mean, the fact that guys like you and Scott Hanna wanted to be there, it makes a difference to a guy like me. So, because you guys are established in this industry, you know.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that hard of a decision to make because we get asked to go to do a lot of shows. There's shows everywhere when they were having shows, and someone will come up and said, "You want to do my show?" And then I don't know what exactly they're bringing to the table. I mean, what do they think they're bringing? I mean, no, because I have a family and I have other shows, but you kind of you've been a patron for a while, so I don't know how many commissions I've done for you before you asked, um, but basically you get into the door, and all of my other artist friends too, they do a lot of work for you. So before you even ask, there are artists that probably made $1,000 worth of being able to feed their family by the money you gave us for those commissions. So when you ask over someone else, obviously we're not going to go with a stranger who basically owns nothing too. Um, you could already displayed that that you are a fan of what we do and you took this art form seriously. So I would pick your show over a guy who I never met before, of course.
That rogue right there was the first piece I got from you 5 or 6 years ago. You were at New York Con, but you were leaving early, and you wound up doing that rogue for me, and it looked fantastic. I mean, it was unbelievable. You knocked it out of the park. That was the first piece that I got from you, and I've gotten, like you said, a lot since. But you're a mainstay on my jams, man. I have to get you on my jams all the time. You're on practically every one of them of the 18 that I have. So yeah, I always. And you, by the way, while we're talking about jams, can I angle this? You did an Aries. I don't know if you could see it. It's right above my head right there. I'll have to post it. It is incredible. You drew an Aries on my jam. The detail on him, it's unbelievable how incredible it came out. So I wanted to say thank you because I didn't get to see you since then. But it's just phenomenal. And everybody who sees that jam, like, oh my God, who the hell did Aries? I'm like, Sean Chen, man.
Yeah, I remember that piece. A lot of times with these jams, there's the artist who likes to take the big central figure that's full figure. But sometimes all that's left over is that one person all the way off to the right, and it's a half figure. And then a lot of times, someone has pre-drawn the layout and everything. So it's a good exercise in making do with what's available, what you can do. So I think that Aries is like a half body that was half drawn.
You made him. Should have been a half body. You made it like a full body. I mean, his leg. You got everything in there. It looks fantastic. But you weren't. It wasn't the last character. It's the character you picked. I give you choice every time. I always give you choice.
Okay.
Yeah, you're never the scavenger. You never get what's left over.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So, what advice would you give up and coming artists that are trying to break into the industry?
Okay, first and foremost, I mean, when people say draw every day, it just means draw a lot. And you really do get better if you draw every day. But I think the most important thing to really put that into overdrive is this, the thing called the growth mindset. So if you can really think about, like the way I see it is like everyone's brain, if you stimulate it by doing a certain activity, it gets better at doing that. And then you can kind of physically see a change in the brain where a certain subject matter in a certain part of the brain, if you look at it, if you know where to look, you will see that that part of the brain gets plump because it's full of blood and there's extra wiggles in there. And that means that this guy does math really well. Then he worked his brain so hard with math that that part of his brain grew really big and it shrank somewhere else to make room for it. So that part, we're kind of understanding how brain works now, because you can see like Albert Einstein's brain is different, physically different from someone else's brain. Not because he was born that way necessarily, but because he thought about a certain subject that he turned his part of his brain into a supercomputer that was visible in his physical brain, which is still on display at some college. So you really have to stimulate your brain to problem solve in the area of your interest over and over again. And it doesn't happen overnight, because the brain can grow like a tree. It starts out as a sapling, and you gotta water it and give it sun every single day, and it grows at the same rate of a tree. And it stops growing if you stop watering it or stop giving it sunlight. So you gotta do the activity over and over again with the mindset of improving on it, not just going through the motions, but making a concerted effort to improve on it, and try to scheme ways of building your weaknesses into your strengths and stuff like that. And you do that, and then years and years go by, then you will get good at it. But if you're just drawing every day with no goal in mind, that's not really a growth mindset. You will get better, but not in any significant way. So I always like to say that I'm not a natural born artist. I had a tremendous amount of interest in that subject matter, and then I worked it a lot, and with a lot of passion until my brain is a powerful supercomputer that can spit out drawings of Aries on a gem piece, and it's kind of like a one-trick pony with that. So I think that's the key is to draw a lot with a growth mindset. That's the key basically.
Excellent. And I'm going to ask you the question that I leave off, my last question for the evening, that I ask every guest I have on the show. If you could go back in time to a younger Sean Chen who was just starting out, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give, or what would you say?
Okay, I was asked this before, and then this is what I would do is, you have this kind of preconceived notion of what's important and what would get, and things that you believe to be true are usually not true. And if you took a real look into what's important, it's a lot of different things. I think when I was younger, I had the belief that I put all my eggs in one basket, and that's drawing ability. Draftsmanship was over anything else. So when it came time to develop your social skills, or to look presentable, or to go out and meet the right people, or for me, I believe that if you just draw really, really well, that the doors will open for you. But I think what I found out is you need to draw well, but only well enough. And anything beyond that is just gravy. There's other things that come into play. And that's whether you're drinking buddies with C.B. Cebulski, or whether you're a person who can get out in front of people and kind of sell yourself, your attitude towards your work. There's other things other than just drawing, and that includes writing, and then so I think that I spent a lot of time just developing the drawing, and I think that kind of hurt, because you would never really think that just being a guy who can go out and socialize and glad hand with all the right people, like, why would that be important when the job is very specific? But that's the way this game is played. So I think I would have gotten a lot further by, a typical example is when I go to a convention, I would be there drawing, because drawing is what I do, and also you can earn money drawing. So instead of going to the bar and then trying to meet like a French publisher or something, I'll be in the hotel room finishing commission and making $80 for that day. So $80 I can put away, but in the end, in the long run, there are so many people I didn't meet, so many opportunities that passed me by, and it's hard to say what damage that's done. It's really hard to say, because there's no way to do like a sliding doors thing to see where I would have ended up.
Right.
And then, so if you go see me at a convention, unfortunately, you'll see the top of my head, and I'm drawing, and then you don't really know whether you can talk to me or not, because I'm not welcoming that at the moment, because I'm drawing furiously, and it turns out well.
But you are very approachable. You are. I mean, you're focused, but you know, don't ever let his demeanor fool you. He is very approachable. He's a really nice guy, and honestly, one of the really probably the most humble guy in the industry. Um, Andy said, speaking of rock stars, this just proves that Sean is like the Dave Grohl of comics. He's talented, versatile, humble, approachable, and has worked with everyone through the years. And I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. Look, a lot of the people I have on the show are great people, and I've become friendly with them or friends with them, you know, depending, you know, there's different levels. Uh, and it's not like you and I go out to dinner and we hang out. So, but we're friendly. I honestly, I can't think of a bad experience or a bad word or anything. You're honestly one of my favorite guests at my show,
Oh,
and one of my favorite people to get on my jam pieces. And I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your career. I of course wish you nothing but success. And I am going to say again, this is the old title. It's now called Wingman, but this book is filled with great art, amazing art. Okay, I mean, look at the kinetic energy in the panels. Look at the storytelling just from the art, and you're not even reading the dialogue yet. I mean, it's a very entertaining book, and I'm not going to give away anything, but the art is spectacular. The inking is spectacular. I think black and white fits the book really well. I don't think I'd want it colored if it was my preference. The writing is top notch, especially for your first time out. I'm very impressed. Humor, drama. You know, there's emotional moments. It's a little bit of a roller coaster that I really enjoyed. It's a great take on the things that inspired the story. And I'm going to remind everybody right below us, scrolling, www.nextchapterpost.com. You have until 8:59 a.m. tomorrow morning to purchase the book. It is well worth the money. It's 50 pages of story with more added in, writing tutorials, which is just helpful to everyone. The art, and then again, 1 in 10 people get some great art from Sean Chen. Those are great odds. It's well worth the money. Trust me. I already bought a book. Even though I have a copy, I want it. I want it. I want all the extras. I want everything. I am not saying this because he's a guest on the show. I'm not saying this because I like him. I'm telling you, it's a really good story. Pick the damn book up, or I'm coming for you.
thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. You've been a real good supporter from day one on everything I do. So I you know, it's great that we have people out there that think so highly. It just makes it really worth it. And when we put in all the work behind on the drawing board and everything, it's just great to know that it means something to someone. So much appreciated.
Yeah, I was sad when it was on Instagram to go check out every week anymore. It was like it was a ritual. It was something to look forward to. You know, as we get older, it's not always there isn't a lot of things to look forward to per se. But I on a daily basis, like, oh, did he put it out yet? You know, put it out. I had you on alert just so I knew when you made a post. I still do, of course, but I had you on alert because I wanted to be there once you posted it. So, and a lot of times I was the first or second person that was, oh, this is so cool. Did you want to plug anything else, or did you want to add anything before you go?
Batman Beyond from DC Comics is the regular monthly title. So I think I skipped issues 48 and 49, so I'm coming back to 50. And then after that, on my Instagram, there's going to be more stuff that I create. I'm going to put it out there first, or at least put the word out there first. Nice. Also, Bernard Chang's Twitch stream, we're there like maybe twice a week, and there's a lot of crazy stuff happening. Like I said, if he was there, we would probably try to hit each other in the crotch constantly but instead, because we can't do that, we draw. So, you know, all the people who show up, you can watch the drawing happen, and then in the end, he puts everyone's name on a big roulette wheel, and then you get that. If you win that piece of drawing. It's like, you know,
that's awesome.
Pretty great odds. So
I'm gonna have to get on Twitch. Yeah, I'm not on Twitch. I'm gonna have to.
A lot of fun. So.
And I don't know if Bernard is still there. I would love to have him on the show at some point too, if he'd like to come on anytime. He has an open invitation. Wow. Raphael bought the book.
Oh, hey, thanks. Thank you so much, Raphael. It means a lot. So I appreciate it.
Listen, I'm telling you, you guys won't be disappointed. I'm not gonna push this hard for something if I'm not fully honestly behind it. So, Sean, thanks for coming out. If you wouldn't mind, just go to the backstage for a few minutes. I know it's late and you've had a long day, but could you hang out for a few minutes? Let me just say my see-yous to everybody. I'd like to speak to you briefly, if that's okay.
No problem. Absolutely.
Sean, thanks for being a guest, man. I wish you the best of success. And by the way, I do have an original Batman from his son.
Oh,
so if his son follows in his footsteps, I have an original. But he's a good kid. He's a good kid. He's always with you at cons, and he's so well behaved, and he's a nice kid, and you could see his wheels turn like yours too. So, I mean, I know I'm a parent. My kids go crazy at home. You're probably thinking, yeah, you haven't seen him during this quarantine, but but it shows he's great.
Right. Very cool. Yeah, I'll pass it along to him. So hopefully we can get this virus out of the way, that we can get back to these shows. I mean, we got to do it. I mean, I'm missing them. Your shows was the highlight of the year, so we got to get those going again.
Yeah, and you always have an open invitation to my show, so hopefully we'll be there soon.
Cool.
All right, Sean, again, thank you so much. Wingman, everybody, nextchapterpost.com, right on the bottom, scrolling there. Go get the book.
Thank
you only have until 8:59 tomorrow morning, so go buy it now.
Cool.
Or I'm coming for you.
All
right, Sean, I will put you backstage, and I'll talk to you in a minute, okay? Thanks for hanging out.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
All right, so episode 12 with Sean Chen. I told you he's a great guy. If you didn't know it already, he's a great guy. The book is fantastic. Alan Jones ordered one. Thank you, Alan. I'm telling you, it's great. So, yeah, Sean's an awesome guy. I was very impressed with the writing. The book is fantastic. Please pick it up. Wingman, scrolling right on the bottom of the page. A couple of quick things I want to say. I'm going to start doing short shows of my jams. I'm going to go through one jam during a show. It's a 15-minute thing, a 20-minute thing. Go through the artists, show you the artwork. And I'm going to be starting that up pretty soon. So check that out. I am going to look at also doing shows where I'm promoting local comic shops. The owners of stores can come on, promote their shops, show us the shops if they want to be live at the store, things like that. We have to support the industry. We have to support each other. Sorry. And we have to recognize all the components that matter. The comic shops are the front line. If not for them, you don't have a place to buy books. The artists are the ones creating it. The writers are creating it. We have to support them. So please, when I tell you to support my show and come out and share and subscribe to the YouTube, I promise you it's not for me. It's so they get exposure. It's so they get eyes on them, okay? So if you get annoyed with me constantly asking to share, just keep that in mind. It's for them. It's for the medium that you love and that you want to continue and continue strong. So please like, share, talk about the show, let everybody know about it. Let them know about Sean's book. Let them know about Batman Beyond, everything. Just talk. The best thing you could do is share it to everybody. Friday, I have Keith Williams, legendary inker. He's inked John Byrne on Alpha Flight and She-Hulk and everything. Another great guy. He will be here Friday, so please come check that out. Please, again, subscribe to YouTube and follow. I also will be doing some giveaways. I'm going to have some art prints. I've even talked to some local artists that are awesome people that are donating art prints for people who, when they win the contest that I have out. So another great group of people in the industry that are caring about the fans. I'm going to leave you what I always leave you with. Have fun, storming the castle.